Let's also then welcome on board Chakri Lokapriya, who's joining in on the show. And we've also got Vaishali Parekh on the technicals. And Chakri, let's get in your take then, and in particular on the entire FMCG space. Given that we have seen these stocks be in the spotlight on the back of the earnings. A lot of brokerages as well turning pretty, talking about how now the companies are losing the growth fervor, and that there is a little bit of competition when it comes to pricing, the path to the consumer, etc. Are you worried about the long-term track record?
If you look at Marico's results yesterday, basically the volumes kind of grew in line slightly better than expectations. The pricing was clearly not there. On the other hand, there's a broadening of demand. So that was the good thing. And on the other hand, simply because it was better than expectations and the stock has kind of been ignored for a long time, there was this rush towards Marico and the other names. So I think it's more a one-off story kind of thing, that it's all done and dusted. Yes, the company looks fine. And the same story holds together for the other FMCG names. So I think, they're all pretty much trading right up there in terms of the valuations. While there are all these so-called green shoots in rural, etc., but they won't materialize to earnings, let's say another couple of quarters down the road. So let's wait and watch sidelines until then.
Right. Chakri, what's making the market nervous? Why this kind of move that we've had this week?
Yeah, morning. I think, it's a continuation of the fear of uncertainty, rather, of election numbers. And I think that probably volatility kind of continue because, as we get closer to the date, hopefully it'll reduce because one would have a greater guesstimate of the number. So I think until then, I think it's clearly the trend, at least the strategy that we are adopting, is buying those companies where the earnings beat has been strong, and more importantly, the expectations of growth are strong. And that theme is reflecting in capex, industrial, and all the autos and the companies related to that.
Okay, fair enough. That's what's really causing the nervousness, because the FIIs have continued to remain net sellers. Let's get in a take from you then as to what the outlook is when it comes to the auto basket, just owing to the view that Chakri, we've got Escorts in the spotlight. Management is looking at an export pickup in FY25, positive brokerage notes, margin pickup. What kind of outlook do you have here?
If you look at whether it's TVS Motors, Hero Motors, yesterday, Escorts, all these companies, there are 2-3 good things which are happening. One is exports is picking up. Second is, their EBITDAs are actually holding up very surprisingly. And third, the volumes domestically are also holding up. Amongst this whole thing, the weakest thing has always been the rural, which is Escorts to an extent, but now they're branching out into a whole host of new other product segments. And if you look at, the auto ancillaries bit of it, which is a kind of indication of where the autos are going, it's a two-way street. And there you see that, like for instance, like bearings and all the segments are reporting very, very strong numbers. So which means autos, I think still two-wheelers, very strong, TVS Motors, Hero MotoCorp. Escorts, I think, is a story in the making.
Chakri, what's your sense on the kind of sell-off and the excruciating, selling that one is seeing now by the FII fraternity, although it's lasted for over a year now? But do you sense that it's time to throw in the towel right now, or would you say that wait it out because you see a recovery in sight?
If you look at, for instance, the FII bit, and if you look at our own clients, the dollar versus the rupee has been an issue for their investments into India. The volatility between, and that has affected their overall returns. Now, in terms of yesterday's, for example, and L&T's overreaction, despite good numbers, yes, there was some margin weakness, but the order book, etc., was very strong. Despite that, the stock, the way it got sold off, was an indication of, when you have to sell, when FII has to sell, the first thing they look for is the large caps. On the other hand, but that doesn't seem to be the trend actually. If you look at another company, very similar company, SKF, which reported good numbers, revenues up 20-30%, margins up 30%, profits up 40%, and they get the demand from industrial and auto and manufacturing. So, which means actually things on the ground are actually improving.
59 points higher. Global markets are firm. But is there a election anxiety which has come in the market? Chakri, realistically, is there an election anxiety which has come in the market? Election was supposed to be more like a no event. Suddenly we are talking about increase in volatility. Suddenly we are talking about all the political narratives. Is there an election anxiety in the market?
Good morning, Nikunj. Yes, you're absolutely right. Over the last 3 or 4 sessions, clearly, there's been lots of various kind of survey numbers, and these numbers are kind of bouncing all over the place, lower than the initial expectations. And that has clearly led to a good amount of anxiety because over the last few days, in fact, global markets have been strong. And so I think it's largely a domestic election anxiety. But if you look at the individual trends in the markets, within the market, companies are showing a good guidance into next year are holding off far better than our companies which are not.
Right. Bunch of other losers in trade yesterday, and we've been marking some of the earnings reaction. L&T, of course, saw excruciating pain. There was Manappuram as well, irrespective of the management clarifications that the RBI draft, or rather the RBI draft norms is not really going to have any impact on them. Still no recovery in sight for both those names, Manappuram as well as Muthoot. Piramal Enterprises as well, sharply lower after its numbers. A 9% fall is what that stock has. Similar was the price action for Asian Paints too. That also fell very hard. About 5% or so is the kind of correction that you had on that stock. Chakri, do you believe that this intense competition, the fact that they may actually lose a little bit of market share, and of course raw material pricing pressure put together, that right now is perhaps not the time to touch the paint sector?
Yeah, Asha, because the story has changed for Asian Paints and the paint sector. If you rewind back about 3 years ago, there was no competition for Asian Paints really. Now, with Grasim and the others coming into play, and they're coming in with, not incrementally, they're opening plants all over the country. It's going to become a volume game. It's already become a volume game. And so the pricing power that Asian Paints had is unlikely to continue in the future, therefore far lower margins into the future, and therefore you'll have to give far lower multiples for the stock, and as its ROE will trend down over the next into the foreseeable future.
Chakri, what's been your last purchase in this market?
Like we just discussed, in fact, the stocks have been around the bearing space, like SKF, NRB Bearings, Timken. I think in this cycle, basically, they are benefited by a number of things which are happening in their favor. One, bearings are required by the automotive industry, by the manufacturing, by defense and railways. So these companies and the sector is seeing the benefit coming from demands coming from the various sectors, and they're translating into numbers. And these companies, many of them are actually MNCs, and so they have this access to their R&D from the parent, which is translating into product innovation, etc., that is required. And if you look at these companies reporting for this quarter, they're all reporting like 30-40% revenue growth, 30-40% EPS growth, and trading at about 25-30 times. So I think this as a segment will continue the earnings growth and therefore stock performance for the next 2-3 years easy.
Okay, Chakri, we'll let you go on that note. Thanks as always for taking the time out and joining in.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.